Today we're going to talk about MLB Pipeline's top 30 prospect rankings, and then we are going to player preview Spencer Torkelson's 2024. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, March 7th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDON, all one word, for $20 off of your first purchase. All righty, welcome back, everybody. Happy Thursday. Hope you're all having a fantastic week so far. The Tigers did not play a spring training game on Wednesday, so we have a little bit more flexibility here. We're going to spend the first part of the show talking about MLB Pipeline's top 30 prospect rankings for the Detroit Tigers. And then we are going to talk about Spencer Torkelson's 2024. Talk about what he improved on, what he needs to continue to improve on, what my expectations are for him this year, etc., etc. All right, let's start off by talking about MLB Pipeline's top 30 rankings, prospect rankings for the Detroit Tigers organization. Obviously, they do their top 100 every year, and then they roll out and they do it team by team, top 30s, and they just released all of the American League Centrals, which obviously includes your Detroit Tigers. So here we are. You like talking about Pipeline on this show. Obviously, we're talking about it today because they just released them, so it's just like in the news, and it's the hip thing, I guess, weird way to phrase that, to talk about right now. It's just in the public eye because they did just come out, but in general, Pipeline is just free and accessible. And, like Baseball America, great people over there, and very, very smart people over there, but, have to subscribe to look at those rankings, et cetera. And I just want, when we talk about and have these conversations, I want to use lists that everybody that's listening can access. So, and it's also MLB's, it's like, it's their rankings, right? It's Major League Baseball's, prospect rankings. So, we're going to talk about that. The Tigers, I think my initial reaction is just that the Tigers top 30 is maybe the deepest it's been in my lifetime. And I am a child of the Dombrowski era. Okay. So that is really not saying a whole lot. I was born into, the 90s Tigers, who were absolutely just terrible. And then the early 2000s Tigers, who were even worse than terrible. And then the Dombrowski Tigers, who were good, but never had a farm system and never cared about prospects and traded them all away and had the worst farm system in baseball year after year. But they won. They won. I know there's some Dombrowski haters out there, but they won. So I have never really had like a sustained, good, consistent farm system. And I think that this might be the deepest. Maybe, I'm not saying it's the best farm system in baseball or anything like that. But when comparing it to other Tigers systems, which I guess is also maybe not saying a whole lot of the past, this is one of the deeper prospect pools. And there's some fun top end talent as well, which I guess we can kind of start off with. Number one on pretty much any list you look at, but on MLB Pipelines, obviously, as well as Max Clark, changed the mechanics a little bit. Obviously, on draft night was the big shock that the Tigers took Max Clark over Wyatt Langford. And the belief from the Tigers organization was that Max Clark had, 5-tool potential and was a guy that could turn into an all-around, just really, really good center fielder with a lot of tools. And the biggest question mark for him to reach that, and the biggest hurdle he would have to overcome, was his ability to hit with power. That was kind of the biggest question mark. Good bat to ball skills, good at drawing walks, really fast, cannon of an arm, good fielder, etc. It's just, is the power going to translate? How much power is there to translate to the next level? And added a big old leg kick this winter. It's not hard to find videos of Max Clark on the internet and his swing on the internet, so you can go check those out pretty easily. But big leg kick now. The organization seems pumped about it. The Tigers seem pumped about it. That's the same thing. And Max Clark seems pumped about it, is what I meant to say. And yeah, they're hoping that can kind of untap into a little bit more power for him. So we'll see how that turns out. Colt Keith at number 2. Not going to talk about him. He's a major leaguer as far as I'm concerned. Jackson Jobe at 3. Added the cutter last year. Only walked 6 batters all season. Now, did miss the first half of the year, but still only 6 walks across all levels. He was remarkable last season, and it would not shock me if he was pitching in the Detroit Tigers major league team. That was a weird way to word that. Would not shock me if he was pitching in the majors at the end of this season. Post-trade deadline Tigers, it wouldn't shock me if Jackson Jobe was on the team. I'm not going to, say that it's a guarantee or anything. So a long season to go. We haven't even started the year yet. We'll see how he looks and whatnot, but I think he's going to look pretty good. The stuff is electric. And yeah, I am kind of under the assumption that either end of this year or next year is going to be Jackson Jobe time. The next wave, Jace Young at 4, Ty Madden 5, Parker Meadows 6, Kevin McGonigal 7, Justin Henry Malloy 8. We talk about Jace Young a lot. Ty Madden is someone who has put up really good numbers since getting drafted. The fact that he fell to the Tigers on draft night in and itself was kind of a big storyline there in the comp round after the first. But my only question with Ty Madden is major league fastball or no? If that's a yes, this guy, he's back in the top 5 prospects in the organization. There was at one point where he had fallen, to the back end. I think he was even outside the top 10 at one point. So to be a top 5 prospect in the org, man, good for him. Looks really sharp in spring training as well. Kevin McGonigal is kind of a guy that reminds me a lot of Colt Keith. At shortstop for now, probably won't stick. Going to move around, see if he finds a home elsewhere defensively. But boy, does he rake. The dude just hits everywhere he's been. And as a lefty bat, 19 years old, was a prep bat drafted last year. I'm super excited for McGonigal, and I'm really excited for him this season. He's a guy that I think if he just keeps hitting, assuming he finds a home somewhere defensively, long-term, it could kind of fly through the minor league system. And then Justin Henry Malloy, we talk about all the time as well. Kiter Montero and Wilmer Flores, respectively, round out the top 10. Kiter Montero, I think, is going to pitch Major League Baseball for the Tigers at some point, whether it's as a starter or a reliever. And Wilmer Flores, I think it's hard not to look at his spring training and go, you know what, this guy could be in the bullpen by August or July, right? We'll see. Obviously, injuries are going to happen. Yeah, I think Wilmer Flores is going to be in this bullpen in the next 6 months, probably at some point as well. So that's kind of exciting. Number 11, Sawyer Gibson Long. Going to pitch for the Tigers at some point. Not going to start off in the majors. That's fine. But I can almost promise you he's going to pitch Major League Baseball this year. People always get way too hung up on like the opening day rotation, like that has any obviously it has a lot of meaning. That's way too dramatic on my part, but like that has any chance of being the only 5 guys that pitch throughout the entire season. Like, obviously that's not true. The teams use, 10, 12, 13 starters a year now. So I would imagine Sawyer Gibson Long is going to pitch for the Tigers at some point. Let's get into this 12 through the rest of the list. There's a few guys that kind of jump out the page here that I want to highlight and talk about. We will do all of that right after this. Fire TV, our new friends of Fire TV, is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing television that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, all as well as free live television. Whether it's the opening weekend for baseball or college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports, brands, etc., all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On, for starters, and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date and up to date in the latest news of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention the great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking, etc. videos as well. So check out the Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me. Visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now also available on Amazon Fire TV and in the free Fire TV channels app. Okay, so we are talking about prospects. So there's a few more names I just want to go over before we head into Torkelson here. Hao-Yu Lee at 15 got him from Michael Lorenzen. Want to see more power this year. That's kind of the big question. Obviously, another OBP guy. If he can play sound defense, kind of hit like he did at points there in the middle of last year, just need a little bit more pop from him. And I think the hype train will really go off the rails there, to be honest. Brant Herter and Troy Melton, both. At Troy Melton at 12, Brant Herter at 16. Both guys that the organization has really liked. Both guys that I think we're going to see already for a little bit there, have seen more of this season in spring already. But Brant Herter pitched really well in Erie last year. 6'6", 250 lefty, just a unit of a human being. Troy Melton, again, really solid down in West Michigan as well, 2.48 ERA. So really, those two guys specifically, I'm really excited for their years. Paul Wilson at 17. I love Paul Wilson. I'm very excited about that draft pick. I'm just excited to watch him pitch, period. Right? This is a guy that that was drafted last season, and prep arm lefty, hopes are can throw pretty hard. And yeah, I'm just really excited they shut him down, obviously, because he was a prep arm last year. So just seeing him pitch in general, pretty pumped for that. Enrique Jimenez comes in at 20. He is the catcher, 18 years old, switch hitting catcher. Was a guy that was, the biggest international get for the Tigers, last year? 2 years ago, 2023. Yeah, last year. So seeing him now maybe play rookie ball at 18 years old, that would be kind of cool. So we'll see what kind of year he has. Wenceel Perez and Eddys Leonard at 21 and 22, respectively. I mean, these are guys that are going to be right on the cusp of the majors. If injuries happen and whatnot, I think Wenceel Perez is going to get a lot more looks in center this year. We kind of talk about him a decent amount because he's on the 40-man. Eddys Leonard, man, look, there's been some wild takes out there. Like Leonard, this guy is not taking Javi Baez's job on opening day in 2024. Okay. Like that's not a report that's going to happen in the next month. I assure you. That's not something that's again, like going to happen. But if he keeps hitting the ball really hard, I think they're going to play him around the diamond and get him kind of comfortable at different positions, second, third, corner outfield, etc. And if he keeps crushing the ball, you might see him in the majors at some point this year. It's not going to be, he's not replacing Javi Baez. Okay. That's a wild take that I saw on the internet. Dylan Smith at 24. I love Dylan Smith. I absolutely love him. He just hasn't stayed healthy. I would love to just see consistent, healthy playing time and consistent outings from Dylan Smith this year, because I think he's really good. I loved him out of Alabama in the draft a few years back now, and I'm just like dying for him to stay healthy for a legitimate amount of time. Roberto Campos and Christian Santana, at the time, both of them were, when they signed, they were the biggest international free agent signings in Tigers history. Campos has done nothing but kind of slide. He needs to hit way more consistently. Christian Santana draws a lot of walks, but that's pretty much it at the plate. Hit 156 in Lakeland last year, but just walked at such a ridiculous rate that he still actually had like a 350 OBP. The last two I want to point out, Isaac Pacheco's at 30. Really struggled mightily at the plate last season, hoping for a bounce back year out of him because 2 years ago he was really exciting. But Tyler Madison might be my dark horse to fly up this list of all of these guys. He's at 28. He has done nothing but be a really, really good reliever wherever he's kind of been at since being drafted. I guess got off to a little bit of a slow start his draft year, but last season, a 3.42 ERA in West Michigan and a 1.62 ERA in 22 games in Erie down the stretch was a big reason that their bullpen was so good in that playoff push for them last year. A friend of the program, we had him on, I think 2 years ago now, but I think is like one of the more overlooked and not talked about reliever prospects in this entire organization. I think very highly of him. I expect him to be in Toledo at some point this year, and maybe even by the end of the year having the conversation about whether he is major league worthy. And I think 2025 is going to be a really exciting year for him in that regard as well. Okay, so there you go. Yeah, again, this is there's some top end talent. There's some depth here that there hasn't been in the past. The pitching development has really taken huge strides forward and is why there's a lot of, increase. Like I said, Brant Herter wasn't really on too many people's radars, has kind of flown up rankings. So, the development team, 2 thumbs up for how the last year has gone. And that's a pretty fun prospect list to go over. There's some websites that have the Tigers as a top 5 farm in baseball right now. So I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's a lot better than it's been. And they've taken a lot of strides in the right direction. So 2 thumbs up in that regard. Ryan Garco, obviously a big reason for that in the Tigers organization, in the Tigers front office. So, okay. I think that's everything. Let me know what you think. Some names that jump out that you really like. Obviously, again, the reason these lists are so fun is because of the conversation that it brings. Not really like the nitty gritty of who's exactly higher than who. I think it just leads to really fun conversations, and the lists are made by some pretty smart people. Let's talk about Spencer Torkelson and his 2024. All right, last season, Torkelson really emerged onto the scene in the second half. His season numbers were a 233 average, a 313 OBP, and a 446 slug. And that was good enough for a 1.4 Fangraphs WAR. We'll talk about that in a second. 9.8% walk rate, 25% K rate, 31 homers, and 94 RBIs, and played in 159 games, by the way, which I think is like an unsung, really good stat. I can't even recall like Torkelson not playing. I think there was, maybe I remember 1 or 2. Obviously, he missed, 3? Remarkable that he was able, and it helps first base, obviously helps a little bit, but good. One of the most important abilities is availability, as they say. I say that half facetiously, but it is actually really important, obviously, to stay on the field. So for him in his second year to play that many games is good. Spent way too much time on this. Let's move on. So last year, again, second half, that's really where the big change was noticeable. If you just go month by month, he had a 575 OPS in April/March, 783 in May, 716 in June, but with 7 homers, 749 in July, and then boom, 892 in August and 821 in September. His first half, second half splits. First half, a 711 OPS. That was 5% worse than league average. And second half, 816 OPS. That's 18% better than league average. Obviously, once you start getting into the 800s, you start getting into like you're a legitimately really good, well above average major league hitter. So, look, hit the ball hard, was pulling the ball a lot. Obviously, the home run uptick happened in August, had 9 home runs. Oh my goodness, this is so embarrassing for this team. He had 9 home runs and 11 RBIs in August. That's remarkable. I didn't even do show prep on that stat. I'm just looking at that right now. And then in September, had 25 RBIs in the month of September alone on 7 homers. The team was a lot better in September. That definitely helps that a lot. But my goodness, get somebody on base, please. So yeah, the biggest thing was pulling the ball hard in the air, like we talked about. Now in September, he did have a few opposite field home runs as well. And AJ Hinch even talked about, when he first, learned about Tork and when he first joined the organization, a lot of the talking point was that he could hit the ball really hard to all fields. And then when he was, going through the minors, he was pulling the ball a lot. So seeing him go push side a little bit is nice to see. But I do think that a majority of his value and his power is going to come from lifting and pulling the baseball. I think that at the end of the day, that's where he found a lot of his success doing that. And I think that that's going to continue. Another thing that really jumps out is that it wasn't all homers, 34 RBIs. Goodness, no, 94 RBIs, 34 doubles. I think is nice. That's up there in terms of American League standing as well. So that's really nice to see. But there's two main things that I am looking for Torkelson to improve on in 2024. And we will talk about those two things right after this. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up, whether it's tournament season or the fight for the playoff home court. There's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments. So get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy app. There's so many fun players to choose from in the game of basketball when it comes to this kind of stuff. Obviously, Curry's always a fun one. But one of the more fun ones lately has been Caitlin Clark. I mean, what an absolute animal, an absolute dog. Taking more on her points lately has been a decent recipe for success. So always kind of in the back of your mind, to kind of look at the more department for Caitlin Clark points. Obviously now the most prolific scorer in the history of college basketball. Super cool moment there. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So talking about Spencer Torkelson, the former #1 overall pick, there's two things I want to see him improve on. One is just walk more. And he didn't walk a little amount last year. So this isn't like, oh, he didn't walk at all and he needs to actually walk. He walked almost 10% of the time, which is really good. He was in the top third in the league in walk percentage last season. I believe he ended with 9.8%, like we said earlier. That is the 67th percentile, so exactly top third of the league. But his chase rate is in the 80th percentile, whiff rate 52nd percentile. Like, this is a guy that does not expand the strike zone and does not swing and miss an obscene amount either. I don't really think there's any reason for him not to take another step forward in the walk department, and that will help that OPS a lot. That'll help that value just in general a lot. It also raises the floor. If you're a guy that you can count on, you know what, even if he's slumping, even if he's not seeing the ball super well, or that power has fallen off the last couple of weeks, you know what, he can get walks. And I think that is a really important thing. Obviously, the organization has screamed that from the rooftops as Scott Harris took over. But I think that's something that's really important to Torkelson's value going forward. So I'm looking for him to take more walks. And the other big thing, which is a little bit more like into the deep nitty-grittiness of the numbers here, is I need him to do better against secondary pitches. Again, we can go through 94th percentile in hard hit rate, 89th in barrel rate, 87th percentile in average exit velocity, 84th in expected slug, 78th in expected weighted on base percentage, right? Like, this dude hit the ball unbelievably hard. His hard hit rate was over 50% last year at 51% almost exactly. So he found the ability and made the adjustments and saw enough pitching and whatnot to be able to hit mistake pitches and hit balls that were way over the heart of the plate, and if he was sitting on it, etc. His first year, he couldn't even do that. Year one, Torkelson, they were just pumping fastballs down the middle, and this dude couldn't catch up to anything and couldn't drive anything. So that is an adjustment that he has made. That's a step he has taken forward. Great. 2 thumbs up. Okay. To get a guy who has over 30 home runs to have an OPS higher than 759, that's obviously more than league average, but for a 30 home run, 90 RBI guy, that OPS should be in the 800s. That is my bar for him this year. I want an OPS that starts with a number 8 for Torkelson. And again, in the second half, he did that. I want it over a full season. I want an 810, 815, 820 even OPS for this guy this season. I think that really is going to come down to his ability to hit secondary pitches. Four-seam fastballs he crushed, to no surprise to anybody. Had 9 home runs off of four-seam fastballs total last year, comfortably more, almost double more than any other pitch he saw. 514 slug against them, right? Absolutely crushed. Sliders against righties and changeups against lefties are going to be the big focal point for this conversation. He saw more sliders against right-handed pitchers than any other pitch besides four-seam fastballs, which he saw the most of for each handedness of pitcher, right? Righties and lefties. So he saw 29% four-seam fastballs, 25% sliders against righties. He hit 198 against them, had a 196 expected batting average, so it wasn't like quote-unquote unlucky. A 353 slug, and actually a 322 expected slug. So maybe even overperformed his slider numbers, which were bad. Now, that doesn't account for the sliders that he spit on that were outside of the strike zone, right? And that he just took for balls. But the sliders that he was hitting, he was not effective against them. And I think that pitchers realized that, and it's why he saw 25% sliders versus right-handed pitching. That needs to be way better. 33% whiff rate. Would love to cut that down. But just need for, again, if it's the pitch that you're going to see the second most besides a fastball, it's great that you can hit fastballs now. That's awesome. That's beautiful. It was it's year 2. It's a great step in the right direction. The next step after is to start hitting those secondary pitches. Against lefties, you're not going to see righty-lefty sliders too terribly often unless you're Tarek Skubal. So changeups is the most thrown secondary pitch. He saw 35% four-seam fastballs from lefties, hit those really well. Changeups, 25%, comfortably, easily the second most he saw from left-handed pitchers. Did not have a single against a changeup, and hit 100. Second most thrown pitch from lefty pitchers to Torkelson last year. Hit 100 with a 300 slug. Only had 4 total hits. They were all extra base hits, I guess, which is good for the slug. But 37% whiff rate, right? Like that is my next step. I don't need you to hit 300 against everything. I don't need you to hit 300 really against anything. Like if you walk a lot and you're a 35 plus home run threat, you're going to have an OPS in the mid 800s, and it's going to be you're going to be a solid ball player. I need much better numbers against sliders versus righties and changeups versus lefties, which I know is super like particular. But if you want to generalize it more, just the secondary pitches that pitchers have to offer him now that they know that he has the ability to do damage on fastballs, right? Pitchers are going to adjust. Inherently, they are going to adjust. And so he has to adjust back. And those, again, just more walks in general, but those specifically are kind of where my eyes are at. I mean, outside of the batter's box, well, actually, we'll wrap up here in the batter's box. Do better with runners in scoring position, please. If you're going to be the legitimate heart of the lineup bat for a playoff team, you cannot hit 208 with a 667 OPS with runners in scoring position, which is what he did in 2023. That can't happen. Got to be better in high leverage situations. In low leverage, he had a 701 OPS. In medium leverage, he had an 888 OPS. That was by far the best. In high leverage situations, he had a 192 average and a 612 OPS. Again, if you're going to be the heart of the lineup, 3 or 4 hitter for a playoff team, that has to get better. So that's in the batter's box. Out of the batter's box, again, 1.4 WAR. That's because he's not a very good defender and he's a first baseman. Now, I always have to add this caveat because people always freak out and get mad at me. He's a really good scooper, okay? He is. That is true. And when Javi is your shortstop, that's very valuable, okay? He graded out that way. He is one of the last year he was one of the best scoopers in the entire game of baseball. Very true. Okay, great. Glad we got that conversation out of the way. Every other aspect of defense, he was literally one of the worst defenders in the entire game of baseball last season. Awful range, awful DRS, balls in play hit to him, didn't result very well. Just consistently, outside of scooping, was toward the bottom of baseball in defense. The reason why that's frustrating to me is not because, at the end of the day, first base defense, if you can scoop, that's fine. It's frustrating because he should be better. He's an athletic dude. Like he's not some heavy-footed like ogre. Like it's wild to me that he was so bad. We can just call it what it is, bad defensively last year. So I expect him to be better. I would imagine he expects to be better as well. And the reason why it makes me upset, and I'm sure the organization and Torkelson probably feel the same way, is he's athletic enough for that not to be the case. Like he is an athletic, in shape, like pretty fast for his size and position dude. There's no reason for him to be as poor defensively as he was last year. So that's another thing I'm looking for. That's pretty much it. As far as what I'm expecting, I'm not going to expect him to hit like 250 against sliders and changeups. I would expect somewhat of improvement. Again, 100 against lefty changeups is really not great. So I would expect somewhat of a step in the right direction. But the biggest thing, if he just does what he did in the second half of last year and walks a little bit more, I'm over the moon, right? I'm running down Woodward and we're throwing a party. And I think he's going to have an OPS in the 800s. That's my bar. My bar for him is 800 OPS. Assuming health and assuming he plays the full season again, I don't see any reason why he can't take another step forward and be a 30 home run, 90, 100 RBI guy like he was last season and have that OPS instead of being a 30 home run, 759 OPS hitter. Get that up. And obviously, if he raises the batting average a little bit more, hitting sliders and changeups will help that. That'll go a long way too. But that is kind of the specific things that I'm looking for that he can do to take that next step forward and be that middle of the lineup, legitimate, thumper, big bat for a playoff contending team. I love the adjustments he made last year. I'm so much more optimistic on him, as I'm sure the rest of the fan base is. I think he took great strides. I think his demeanor was fantastic last year as well. Just really kind of seemed to keep, at least publicly, a level head and was really, good about, the taking answers and questions and whatnot, even despite the struggles early on and the struggles in 2022. I'm a huge fan of him, and I really do expect him to take another step forward. The debate is just how big of a step forward. Is it, last year to a 780 OPS and maybe he just hits a couple more homers and everything else stays the same? Or is it a bunch of legitimate adjustments and we have, that 820 second half OPS is maintained over a full season? Because if it's the latter, then it's going to be a fun summer. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in. Every day, we will be back tomorrow. We have split squads on Thursday, so we'll be recapping the performances from those games and then continuing our player previews. All right? Let me know what you think about Tork. Obviously, the prospects as well. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.